my sweater. My grandson slept in the sweater.
Abular Bonilla took us inside his East Harlem apartment, which he says started to feel frigid around 8 p.m.
Forget about it. Kept changing water, buckets, containers, anything to keep the place warm. It was unbelievable.
His main concern, his elderly mother, who's diabetic.
I thought she was gonna die on me. I thought she was gonna die.
His neighbor with the same worries.
My mother's back there. My mother, she's don't have no legs.
The national headquarters of RT America in our nation's capital. Hello again, everybody. I'm Rick Sanchez. Here is the news that nobody else wants to tell you, so I'm just going to go ahead and say it. All right? We're losing the war in Afghanistan. There, you heard it. Losing the war in Afghanistan in a horrible way. And there's no better proof than what appears to have just taken place over the weekend. See, in war, there's their side and then there's our side, right? Their side in Afghanistan is the Taliban. Kind of know that, right? Our side is the Afghan security forces that we have trained and chopped up, right? Well, according tonight, our nation celebrates one of its most inspirational leaders and activists by honoring the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. We know all that he came and dealt with racial fairness and lost his life in that fight. But did you know that there are investigations that have gone on about how actually he died? See, most of us think that we know exactly how he died, how he was shot, and it was an open and shut case. Well, guess what? This is an amazing tale that you're about to hear from Michelle Rubenstein about what has been uncovered regarding his death. I'm gonna hand it to you and let you take it away, because in my conversations with you thus far, I have been drop-jawed listening to you.
And so was I. I actually spoke earlier today to Dr. William Pepper. He actually, on behalf of Coretta Scott King and the King family, filed a civil suit in the case of the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King. Now, this is the only trial that's ever been held about this assassination, because as we know, James Earl Ray, after he pled guilty, then there was no trial. So this is the only trial that's ever been held. Now, we're all familiar with the official story of the lone gunman, right?
Yes, no. I mean, the record companies gave me the maps and the itinerary and this thing.
Negro Motorist Green Book.
Yeah, this whole place is colored because they don't sound like it, traveling while black.
That's Viggo Mortensen and Linda Cardellini in the Golden Globe-winning movie Green Book. The movie's title is a reference to the real Green Book, a traveler's guide back in a hostile time, which some people still remember all too well. Our cover.
By the time Missouri Governor Jay Nixon went on television yesterday to announce the midnight curfew for residents of Ferguson, we'd already gone off the air here on MHP. For part of the show, Dorian Warren, who was with me at my table yesterday, stuck around and joined my colleague today at home in this table during the news conference. At this ended, Dorian weighed in on the historical presence of what the governor had to say.
What you just said, when the sun goes down, here is the historical context of this. If you were black in the LA town, you could not be in that town when the sun goes down, and it was a threat to your safety.
Historian and author James Wilson, the man who literally wrote the book on Sundown Town, uncovered thousands of these towns that exist in the United States.
Former Marine is taking action after she says she was stripped and humiliated at a LaSalle police station. This morning, the sheriff and several deputies faced an excessive force lawsuit. Surveillance video from inside the cell shows 3 deputies wrestling Zandrea Eskew on the ground during a strip search back in January 2017. Her attorney says video moments earlier during her interrogation shows her calmly answering questions. The 28-year-old former Marine
A teenager suspected of killing a rabbi appeared in court today. He is accused of shooting that rabbi to death during a botched robbery. And that suspect, only 15 years old.
and his family was there for today's court appearance. Local 10 News reporter Ben Kennedy, he is live in Miami with the very latest.
Good afternoon, Constance and Christy. That teen's family was hoping for some sort of a bond and he could possibly go home today. But the judge said with a charge as serious as this, it was not going to happen.
Welcome. Welcome to the most hated show in the black corner of the internet. I'm your host, Mr. Blows Your Minds. And welcome to Black Minds TV, Black Minds Show. Again, first and foremost, I want to thank those who should be subscribers in the audience. What's good, fam? Subscribers, what's good? As always, another night, right? Passerbyers, welcome. It's always a grand opening over here. Go down the aisle, see something you might like. While you're at it, hit that like button, hit that dislike button, or hit that comment button. Agents, calling my phone. What's wrong with you? Anyway, you know I got to get my spiel out before I get it going, right? Hello and welcome to the Black Minds News. I'm your host, the Whiteologist, Mr. Blows Your Minds. And this channel is to report, transmit, communicate, articulate, relate, decode, unveil, spread the news, whether it's by news, video, websites, or quotes from publication. As I articulate these information, I ask that the creator of the universe be here, heart, soul, mind, and spirit. As a descendant of the greatest people who they created what they call the greatest nation, what they call the United States, on this channel over here, we give honor. Because you know why? The truth don't need no partner. And you know what my motto is? I'm never going to tell you what I heard. I'm only going to tell you what I know. That's right, y'all. Again, welcome again to another live thought-provoking show. Again, what we do over here is we sift through what's going on in the world that we live in. Again, like a miner sipping through, trying to find nuggets of gold, so that we can disseminate, look at, break down, and understand what parts of that part of, that we have to look at and extract, like eating fish. My saying over here is like fish from the bone, right? You eat the fish, but you spit out the bone. So everything that you get sometimes is not edible. Sometimes you only got to take the part that's only good for you, right? Sometimes you may not understand where I'm coming from, but later on down the line, again, as you do news, there's always a cycle. See, it starts one way, and then it'll come back later on, and you'll be like, oh, I remember that. Now you know why I did what I did. So, you know, most of the country has got some snow on the ground. It's cold outside, right? Snuggle up, right? Get you a bottle or something. Got your honey or one of them things, right? And so, again, you know, this is a time where, again, people who are unfortunate, right? You know, the people who are in the system that comes again, most likely you're part of the DOS family, right? The DOS people, right? Descendant of slaves in this land. You know, we always been, you know, struggling to pull up the bootstrap that most people in this country say it's easy for you to do. You don't have any obstacles or anything. Just do as I do. Well, maybe because of a lot of things you have garnered through some of the perks of being American, right? You American, right? I got a hyphenation on my American, right? So I don't get to get all the perks that you get. So there's a lot of things as a descendant in this land I didn't get. So you don't expect me to be equivalent to you when sometimes you didn't put in the kind of work I've done. So based on the fact that people have garnered and made so much money off of the backs, again, just imagine get somebody who can make them work for free and never have to pay them, and you get all the proceeds and the benefits from it, right? I guess you would be, again, an overflow of milk and honey, right? You would be the land of milk and honey in that aspect, but then you have some people who are descendants of those, again, where they said emancipated, master let you go, you went out there, you had nothing but the shirt on the back, and you was out and on the journey, but nowhere to go, no money in your pocket, right? And you've been struggling ever since. Now, again, there's a dichotomy there. There's some of us who were in the house that got some better skills in the little association, and I guess they don't know what to talk about that. One day, that's going to be a conversation about those who did come off the plantation, who were in the house and got a little something from master, you know what I'm saying, got a little shuffle money, something, versus those who didn't get nothing. Well, myself, I come from those who didn't get nothing. And so a lot of us, we had to rely again because, again, it was the transfer, right? When the Civil War happened, it was the South and the North, and the North ended up taking the South and took what the property that belonged to the South and then co-located it into its own, and you became a ward of the state. But again, you know, like a bad parent, the children now are trying to recoup and get some damn, let's say, well, they would say child support today, right? Could we look at it in that form and fashion? Could we say that what happened in the Civil War and that happened in emancipation, that you did your children wrong, you was a deadbeat dad and never wanted to give no money, right? You've been neglecting for years and years, and the account is so big that it done trickled to everybody that's been associated to you. So what you do once in a while, you give some crumbs. You say, okay, get you a little unemployment. Get you some welfare, right? We're going to give you a little housing. Well, that's what you see sometimes. You see a lot of our people in there. In this particular story that I'm about to show right here, well, that's what happens with sometimes, right? So when we live in these kind of conditions, right? But nobody's going to say that these people are slumlords. They're just going to say, well, you know, this is what you get. You live in this, so then what are you crying for? It's better than having nothing, right? All right, so let me go ahead. Let me see how we're going to work tonight. Let's see if it's going to work with some crispness tonight. So let's have some crisp to it. Let's see. All right, so let's see what's good. Get it snap, pop, and crack, and let's see how it's going to work, or I'm going to have to do what I always do. Let's see. Let's see. Yeah, it's already freezing up, so, you know, it's going to have to... You know, we have to put some magic in there, right? All right, so that's doing this, doing that. Okay, hold on. Do what you do. Do what you do. There you go. Come on.
North Plaza described feeling overnight.
In the coldest 2 days, we had no heat and no hot water. Maybe it was cold. I had 2 blankets, my bathrobe, a sweater. My grandson slept in a sweater.
Aguilar Bonilla took us inside his East Harlem apartment, which he says started to feel frigid around 8 p.m.
Forget about it. Kept changing water to buckets, containers, anything to keep the place warm. It was unbelievable.
His main concern, his elderly mother, who's diabetic.
I thought she was going to die on me. I thought she was going to die.
His neighbor with the same worries.
My mother's back there. My mother, she's don't have no legs, and you know, and I take care of her, and it was really cold back there, so I had to put sheets.
The New York City Housing Authority restored heat and hot water by morning. These residents here among thousands over the past 2 frigid days facing this problem. But NYCHA says it's improving its response time.
Last year we were restoring heat within 36 hours at this time, as compared to this year, 10 hours.
Giving CBS 2 a tour inside NYCHA's Customer Complaint Center, where it has added a new alert system and a heating specialist on nights and weekends.
We're doing better with our staffing, so we've decided to hire up different staffing levels.
But those who slept in the cold say it's not enough.
It's just crazy in here. Housing really needs to get it together.
NYCHA says it sent staff here this morning to follow up and assure residents are getting adequate heat. It also tried a new tactic yesterday, opening up 12 warming centers around the city, so while residents were getting repairs fixed, they had somewhere to go. We're live in East Harlem. Jenna DeAngelis, CBS 2 News.
Okay, Jenna, thank you.
And boy, I tell you, boy, this is the hardest black show in the corner that makes it hard to work. You would think that I'm over here doing some VHS, or I'm doing it with sticks and the firewood, right? No, this is technology, but again, it's something that keeps prohibiting me from doing what I do. But you know I'm going to do what I got to do, right? So, all right. So we have a situation here where we talk about housing. And again, I know a lot of people have a problem because they say, my tax-paying money pays for you to live while I work hard. Well, if you're seeing somebody on the street and they needed some money and you have extras, you don't mind throwing a couple pences in the cup. So it'll be the same here. Now we understand able-bodied people, right? But we're talking about elderly people. Again, in housing, again, is set up in such a way for those people who, you know, they don't quite, you know, they're struggling, right? And again, people would like to think that the whole country could just work and everybody would be able to just maintain. But a democracy could not function like that. Again, what would be good if it would be, what would be the system if you had people that didn't, have crime, that didn't break the law, you couldn't write tickets, right? Would be no need for judges and lawyers and all that. So again, don't get caught up in all that. Just look for what it is, right? So here it is, you had some people who lived in a housing situation, and again, we never call these people slumlords, right? People sit there and they pay their money. Again, they get good money because, again, they get that guaranteed government money, right? And then the people who are there on such a, fixed income can only ration out so much. I said ration. That's right, ration out. They can only ration out so much of the money they got. And so, again, because I guess that you're not getting your cut from the gov, I guess you say, well, I can't pay heat. So you reneged on your aspect, and guess what? The residents have to suffer. If you from where I'm from, I remember back in the old days when it used to be real winters, right? This ain't winter now, y'all. You get a one day that'll cover the rest of the damn, snow now, like say the snow, and then this snow will last all the way through to spring, right? I remember when it was snow out there so high, at the news, we used to be in the back skitching. We used to car drive by, grab the back of the bumper, and ride like, how white folks, y'all go to Aspen or some Switzerland and shit, right? We just went on the streets and got on the back and we rolled the back of the damn thing. That was our toboggan and shit, right? So, so when you come from those kind of areas like that, people have to do what they do to maintain. But you would never call these people slumlords, right? Because, again, they get their money based on you being in the condition you do, and they get way more guaranteed money than they could get from you, but they don't have to provide no service. Now, again, there should be called out, and there should something be lawfully on the situation, because these was elderly people, right? So I just wanted to bring a little attention to it, because, again, when we come from where I'm from, we used to put pots of water on there. It get cold. When you had all the blankets and it still was cold as shit. Felt like a window was open. I put a big ass pots of water and boil that mug in there, and you got some instant heat. Sometimes people put open the oven, all that good stuff, right? I know y'all bougie today. Some of y'all so far from that you don't even remember that, because you got a better life now that you think. Now you ain't so po no more, right? But again, that's just how it used to be. And so when I see situations like that, it brings back some old memories. But again, I understand the situation, and again, to bring some light to it, for the simple fact, again, the most hated show on the black corner of the internet, because I know what the numbers reflect is not what's really being seen, right? So they got to make you think nobody's looking. But again, I look at a lot of stuff, so I know there's more people looking than not. Now, moving on. So, again, as we talk about being DOS, being people that we would be the hyphenated Americans, right? We black Americans in here, right? So let's say somebody who's a black American who is trying to be a 100 citizen, right? Let's say they done fought for the country, right? And they upright citizens and went to school, got degrees, and all this. And then they just happen to get in a situation where the law enforcement has to pull you over. Sometimes you could do all the right things and still you can get the lights in the back. Ain't that right, y'all? Sometimes you could be driving and mind your business, ain't done nothing, and then here come the lights. And you're like, oh, shit. Oh, shit. Now, who seen my video where I did that reenactment when Mr. Blows Your Mind was in the car? Did you check that one out? Yeah, that's right. You remember that one I did, right? So, but again, that happens, right? I mean, they got a job to do. Get you to and fro, and again, my boys will say we don't need no license, right, to travel, right? And everybody, we don't need that. But I see some videos, but again, if you're gonna play the game, you better play the game right, because they're giving Punkerhead Deluxes out here with extra fries if you don't, right? So this sister right here, man, I seen this and I was just like, man, that's kind of wild. It's wild. So let me go ahead and cue it up. And let's see, do what I want to do. Let's see, do I want to go there first? Or do I want to go, hold on, wait a minute. Maybe that's not it. Hold on, let me see something, y'all, before I do that, because I don't want to do that before, I don't want to jump out the window too quick. Because that might not be what I think that is. Hold on. Give me 1 second. Let me look at something. Because, you know, they always got me on a string now, right? Let me see what this is. Oh, no. Okay, hell no. Okay, yeah, this is the one I want. This one. All right, sorry about that, y'all. Skip what I just said about her. Well, matter of fact, no, I'm going to go ahead and go to her. I'm going to go to her. I'm going to go ahead and go to her. We're going to go to her. Because that's not the one I want to go, but I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway. All right, so we're going to go sit back for a quick second. And should be kind of quick, too, right? So let's see how this going to make it. Let me make sure everything good. So everything kind of slowed up. I don't, you know, these mugs, you know, they be doing a lot of stuff behind the scene that y'all don't see, right? You hear me talking, but you don't get to see what I see, right? All right, so I got that up there, and we about to fire it up. And let's see if it's gonna work from here. Gonna work from there? Yes, sir. Let's get it.
Action after she says she was stripped and humiliated at a LaSalle County jail. This morning, the sheriff and several deputies face an excessive force lawsuit. Surveillance video from inside the cell shows 3 deputies wrestling Zandrea Eskew on the ground during a strip search back in January 2017. Her attorney says video moments earlier during her interrogation shows her calmly answering questions. The 28-year-old former Marine sergeant accuses deputies of excessive force and civil rights violations. Eskew had been arrested on suspicion of driving under the influence. Her lawsuit also claims she passed a field sobriety test but was arrested anyway. 5 years ago, LaSalle County paid out settlements for similar lawsuits by other women and promised better training.
Marine Corps vet sues sheriff office claiming she was detained naked for 12 hours. You know I'm going to say that again. Marine Corps vet sues sheriff's office claiming she was detained naked for 12 hours. This story was done January 16, 2019, ABC News, and this is how it reads. A woman is suing Illinois sheriff and several of his officers, claiming she was forcibly stripped naked in a vicious attack and unlawfully detained in jail for nearly 12 hours. The alleged incident happened at the LaSalle County Jail on January 20, 2017, after 28-year-old Zandrea Eskew was detained early that morning on charges of driving under the influence and resisting arrest. The LaSalle County State's attorney dismissed the charges 18 months later, according to court documents obtained by ABC News. The lawsuit filed Tuesday states that Eskew, an African-American Marine Corps veteran who was honorably discharged in 2015, was falsely arrested after passing all field sobriety tests and demonstrating no signs of being under the influence of alcohol or drugs. Eskew, who claimed she cooperated with the officers and complied with all their commands, was taken to the jail where she was given an opportunity to post bail and was forcibly dragged into a cell according to the complaint. The lawsuit claims several officers then slammed Eskew to the ground and physically restrained her, causing bodily harm. They forcibly and maliciously stripped all of her clothes and undergarments from her body and violently pulled her hair, causing further pain and injury according to the complaint. There was no legitimate or necessary law enforcement, safety, or penological objective to forcibly stripping Eskew of her clothing. The only objective of the officers was to punish, harass, humiliate, degrade, and inflict physical and psychological pain. The lawsuit states the officers' conduct in stripping Eskew of her clothing was intentionally demeaning, dehumanizing, undignified, humiliating, terrifying, embarrassing, and degrading. The LaSalle County Sheriff's Office declined to comment on the lawsuit as per request of our attorneys and directed any request for information to the LaSalle County State's Attorney Karen Donnelly, who did not immediately respond to ABC News email Wednesday morning. The jail where Askew was detained was equipped with video surveillance that recorded the incident, according to the complaint. This attack and stripping occurred in presence or with the knowledge of other LaSalle County officers. The complaint states, none of the officers attempt to stop the vicious attack on Askew despite the fact that it occurred over several minutes and she was crying out in extreme distress, pain, and fear during the attack. Footage provided by Askew's attorney, Terry Eco, to ABC Chicago station WLS shows his client being thrown into a jail cell, stripped of her clothing, and left naked on the floor under a blanket. Askew can be heard in the video crying and screaming while repeatedly pleading with the officers. The officers released Askew from custody almost 12 hours after her arrest, according to the lawsuit. You cannot strip people and treat them like animals because they defy your authority. All right, so we have a situation here. Again, as I said, that the lights come on, sheriff pull you over, said that they gave her a sobriety test, right? Her name was Zeandra Askew, right? She was 28 years old. Matter of fact, she was a Marine Corps vet, right? So she done gave service to the country, right? And so whatever transpired out there between her and the officer end up getting her inside to the jail, right? Because again, if she took a sobriety test and she passes it, right? How did she end up getting into the jail? Once she got into the station, we see that something transpired that they asked for a strip search. Yet no charges. Held her for 12 hours. She said she was in there naked. Right, so basically it was kind of almost like raping, right? They strip you down, pull your hair, you know what I'm saying? I mean, some things might be warrant for certain situations, right? But again, if you can't justify it, again, we must understand what does justification mean in the system that we live in, right? We understand the old saying is just us, right? There's two systems here. There's the white system and then there's the black system. Again, like they had the black code laws, right? And so here was that somebody, again, like I said, you can do all the right things, right? You can do all the right things, and yet somehow something wrong happened. So here was this young sister, 28 years old, put in a demeaning, humiliating, degrading situation. Not knowing, scared, not knowing, what is the true agenda here? Just taking just straight advantage of your authority and position. And then to just say, well, get paid. Go ahead, sue us if you want to do that. Just sue us. It just seems that, again, the story before, we talked about people who would be like using, let's say, housing or getting some kind of public assistance, that people cry about people getting your tax money for that, right? Kind of like what the end said, I didn't vote for that, right? You didn't vote for that. But you don't vote also for, let's just say there's 50 states in the United States. We ain't going to talk about all the accessories. There's about 55 of them. But we ain't going to talk about the 55. We're going to talk about the 50 or the 49. Right? If I got to take 50 out because that's Hawaii, right? So we're going to say 49 in here, right? And there's 49 states, and then go within these cities. Why do you think a lot of these cities are bankrupt? Why these cities don't have money? Because why? It is the continuance of lawsuits that is happening because people are being mistreated in situations that don't warrant. But again, if I got a job and if I can hide behind my job, I do as I please, and guess who gets to flip the bill because of my malfeasance, right? I guess that's right. That'd be right, right? Malfeasance, right? Okay, so you, as the taxpayers, don't complain about that. You don't complain about that because, again, we understand the drawing lines. Some people look at that as the protection to keep the jungle from spilling over into our land, right? So we commend those when they do that because, again, we understand. You know, you have to do these things, right? But again, the taxpayers don't cry about that. But I guess they piling up, right? You keep piling up. But again, those are not some of the stats and things that people will talk about. But the simple fact that, again, they're kind of in agreement, right? You're kind of agreeing with some of that. Again, you see the woman, they hire her screaming and everything. And here's these women that seem to be enjoying it. Again, they say, well, where was the other officers? Again, it went on for several minutes. Somebody of a superior officer or somebody could have been intervened, but they chose not to because, again, there was something that either been said. Again, they said because somebody was not obeying your authority so you could take it to the fullest. Okay, you do what you do. See, but see, the thing is, there's a thing called karmic. What goes around shall come around, and when it come to you, you have to remember all the things that you did, right? You have no choice. See, some people, I don't think they believe that thing. You think you could keep doing it, and that somehow it don't come. See, what may happen is you may put that on somebody else that you love, and something bad happens to them. Again, we weren't there. We only seen an assessment from what the situation and what the article says. But again, just doing it. You wouldn't want nobody doing that to your mama or your grandmama or your daddy or your granddaddy. You wouldn't want nobody doing that to them. So again, I heard or read somewhere, do unto others as you want them to do unto you. So I guess that what you do unto others, then you want others to do to you. Well, maybe at this point in time it won't happen. Maybe it won't happen tomorrow. Maybe it won't happen next year. But eventually, that will come back and rear its head towards you. Moving on. So, people out here doing all kind of stuff, right? So this one here I seen again, see the same situation. This here, I don't have no video for it, even though I think there's a video for it. But I seen the story and I was like, well, I don't, the heightenedness, right? This anger of this, we got to do something. Well, as Mr. Blows Your Mind, the one who did the video, and kind of forecasted this was coming, right? Due to the simple fact that, again, they knew that we knew now. So, again, they knew that we had to do something because now they know. Before, they were just going to work it behind the doors and with the science and try to, do in vitro and do the octomom and all that stuff. But, again, it became public information. Again, that's what Black Minds News is. We're going to go get the public information and we're going to just disseminate it as a news as a black media source in the black corner of the internet. That's what we do over here. Now, sometimes it rubs some people in the wrong way, but I understand. I mean, you do the same when it comes to us, right? So when it's out there and we do wrong, you put it out there and you plaster us. Now, the thing is, I'm not plastering nobody. I'm just reporting, again, for certain information for our people to have some understand what's going on out there. So, now, I will touch this later on. But, again, we just had the commemorative of one of our greatest, we say heroes, right? We say kind of a hero. You can say the hero. Right, the ancestors. So, over here on this show, we give honor, right? So, Martin Luther King birthday, the so-called the official holiday date, not the birthday, but the official one, again, to make it so that it can, Monday and all that whole nonsense, right? Like your birthday had to always fall on a Monday, So anyway, so this story came due to the simple fact that, again, like I said, I think Martin Luther King kind of is the spirit of like the ghost of Christmas past. It keep coming back and they keep reflecting to show you kind of like with, that whole thing with Scrooge, right? And then it keep showing you what it was and you have to look at yourself and you're not liking what you see because, again, you haven't changed too much from the time 51 years ago that the man was on the planet, which is in about a couple more months. April 4th, right, will be 51 years. So a story broke, and this is what took place. Let me play this, and we'll come back and let's see what happened. Let's see how you're going to get it. Weak charges filed against gun-wielding man who threatened black kids on MLK Day as new video emerges. You know I'm going to say that again. Weak charges filed against gun-wielding man who threatened black kids on MLK Day as new video emerges. This story was done in the Miami News Time, January the 22nd, 2019, and this is how it reads. After police arrested the man who appeared in a viral video brandishing a gun at kids on bicycles who were blocking traffic on the Brickell Avenue Bridge on Martin Luther King Jr.'s day, some observers say the charges against him are insufficient. A new video has emerged showing even more hate. Last night, video captured by a member of the Dream Defenders, a civil rights group, went viral. It showed a man, now identified by police as a 51-year-old Mark Allen Bartlett of Hollywood Beach, holding a handgun at his side while rushing towards the children. Some of the kids screamed and run away. "Get the fuck out of here," Bartlett yells at them. "You fucking losers, you fucking stupid niggers. You're all fucking dumbass fucking niggers." An arrest from obtained by New York Times from the Miami Police Department shows Bartlett, who stopped in preliminary charges with carrying a concealed firearm, a felony around 6:30 p.m. Monday. The form lists Bartlett as self-employed and details how police responded to a call where the driver was armed with a gun and following behind juveniles in a dark blue Range Rover. Police spotted him on Biscayne Boulevard just after Northeast 11th Street and noted he matched witnesses' description of a man who was involved in a verbal altercation with several juveniles on bicycles who were blocking northbound traffic on Brickell Avenue. The arrest forms goes on to say witnesses described Bartlett as brandishing a gun in his hand, causing juveniles to flee with the driver in pursuit. Felony stop was conducted when cops caught up with the Range Rover. Officers asked Bartlett if he had any weapons. He said yes, and when they searched the vehicle, they found a black Springfield Armory XD9, which was located in the right front passenger rear pouch, loaded, without a holster, and readily accessible to the driver. Asked if he had a permit to carry the gun, Bartlett said he didn't know he needed one. Cops arrested him. Later, while in custody, the arrest form says, Bartlett said, "Why am I being arrested when those kids are free to ride around? I pulled out my gun, but I never pointed it at them." Another video that surfaced just after midnight shows Bartlett telling the young people blocking traffic to get in front of my car. "You fucking piece of shit. Niggers suck, niggers suck, niggers suck, niggers suck," he says over and over again. On Instagram, Miami Commissioner Keon Hartman said Bartlett should be hit with more serious charges. Assault with a deadly weapon and calling them niggers sounds like a hate crime to me. Hartman wrote, Mark Bartlett was arrested, but his charge doesn't reflect his assault. Yet, let's see how our state attorney office decides to file charges. Others echo that cry. All right, so we have a 51-year-old Mark Allen Bartlett of Hollywood Beach situation. It says that some kids was out there on their bikes, kind of blocking up traffic. I think the video that I kind of heard, I didn't actually get to see it, but I heard where it was kind of like a woman was kind of stating the fact that one of them had ran over her foot or something to the point of that. And so that's what initiated the whole situation. And it was this individual who ended up getting out of his car, coming to save a damsel in distress, right? Now again, he feels that by him just drawing the gun but not pointing it is not a crime, right? And that the act that he did is justifiable under what circumstance? Okay, it was some unruly children maybe, right? It was unruly kids, right? It was on their bike, right? And they causing traffic, right? You know, from that old school way where, you know, some adult could come out there and just, you know, tell the kids, you know, whether they had to do it a little forcefully or they come out there with their presence. But again, when you start coming out with guns, it's like, you know, you done lost your tough card, right? You ain't too tough, is you? Right? That you had to come out to brandish your gun. Not just your presence of being a man and being like, you know what? Won't y'all get out the way? You holding up traffic. What's wrong with y'all? Right? There's some things you could have just said as a man. Pulling out a gun, see, you know, there's a lot of people, the first thing they do, they want to tell they pull out the gun. I'm going to shoot them and pull the gun. Well, let's look at the history of the gun and the reason why you need the gun, because again, money, you wouldn't have been able to do the things that you do. Let's keep it 100, right? You understand the history about 1345, when they first making their first gun and so forth, and then, you know, that's why they had to come back and now recolonize Africa now, because you could have never colonized Africa without it, right? You can't do it. You couldn't subjugate and colonize without it, right? You win some of the battle, but you don't win the war without it. So now the gun has become the manhood to threaten, right? I can put my gun to you and control, and I can kill you at the whim of my... Yes, you have that ability, right? You can do that. But the thing is, you know, what that says a lot about you. The first thing you had to do is pull a gun. Again, I say that for my own people. I don't understand why there's so much killing and shooting is because, again, it's like you're not used to taking an ass whooping, right? You know, let's take that shit back. You know, back in the day, you know, fisticuff, get knocked out, get beat up, get black-eyed. That was part of the game. But again, just like in, what was it, Friday, when he told us that you live another day, right? Now, in this case, mama can't take the L. So everybody got to now, again, this being the 6% of the world's population, but it got about 9% of the all the guns in the damn world. What does that say about our nation? What is it saying about, well, we're going to say the people in the nation who holding all the damn guns, right? Because if you didn't have the gun, who would you be? Well, I guess that's a bit of, what kind of man would I be, huh? If I didn't have this 6-shoe spring, huh? What kind of man would you be? You wouldn't want to find out about that, would you? So again, that was made to give an advantage. Because without it, you don't have the advantage. You can't command the demand without it. So you wouldn't put it up on kids. Put it up on the kids. Right? Made them scream and run. Right? And then what did they do? They didn't even really put the charges on you. Because why? They said, yeah, you know, rambunctious ass niggers. You said it. That's okay. Don't worry about it. I didn't pull my gun on them. Well, yeah, all right, don't worry. You have a gun card? No, I didn't have a gun card either. All right, don't worry. Don't worry about it. We're just going to give you something misdemeanor or some shit, okay? But if that be us, huh? Find a corner in the corner of a crack and put your ass in it, right? It's funny, man. I don't understand. Y'all can't see yourself, man. You just can't see yourself. You just can't see yourself, right? Everything is good. It's always good, ain't it? It's always good. So let me see who out here, man. Let me see who all out here. I got a couple people in the house. Who else I got up in here? Other than some agents up in here. I got all agents in the house, huh? Got me sequestered off, and then you sitting up in here listening to me, huh? Growling and snarling, right? Mouth dripping, right? All right. Keep on listening. So here's another situation. Again, two sides to the system, right? White side and the black side. Situation happens where somebody is caught in a criminal situation, gets killed. Well, you know, depending on who you are, the status that you fall again in society, because again, one aspect you try to act like this is the caste system, and then you say, well, it's an economical capital system. So if you have a lot of money, you have a lot of status, so you have the importance. So if something should happen to somebody like that, then it's we're going to go all out to make sure that this person is apprehended. At all costs, at all expenses, and it don't matter who we get as long as we get somebody, right? So here's a story here that broke, you know, and so I'm going to give you the history of it as it plays out, right? As it plays out, right? So let me set it up for you first. And while y'all sitting up in here, you know, I always ask to let me hold something, right? You sit up here and you're listening to me, right? So let me give you a little reminder just in case you ain't paying no attention. Let me give you a little this and that. And then we'll come right to the part of the show, right? So this is for those sitting up in here. This for you.
Teenager suspected of killing a rabbi appeared in court today. He is accused of shooting that rabbi to death during a botched robbery. And that suspect, only 15 years old.
And his family was there for today's court appearance. Local 10 News reporter Ben Kennedy, he is live in Miami with the very latest.
Good afternoon, Constance and Christy. That teen's family was hoping for some sort of a bond and he could possibly go home today. But the judge said with a charge as serious as this, it was not going to happen and sent him back to jail where now he is locked up at this hour.
There was a grand jury indictment charging you with first-degree murder.
15-year-old DeAndre Charles faced a judge under arrest for the murder of a rabbi back in 2014. The teen's family was in court as the judge sent him back to jail with no bond.
We think technically he should be getting a bond. We don't think the state has proven anything other than filing a piece of paper.
Officers got tips for more than a year about two possible gunmen, even this rough sketch drawn by a witness. DeAndre Charles is charged with first-degree murder of Rabbi Joseph Raxon, who was shot and killed August 9th of last year while walking to temple in northeast Miami-Dade. Police say the 60-year-old was attacked in an attempted armed robbery.
We want this vicious thug to be prosecuted to the fullest extent the law allows.
But Charles' family says he was home at the time of the crime. The teen is a freshman at Miami Norland Senior High with a juvenile record for theft and resisting arrest without violence.
I mean, it's very difficult on the family. He's very young. They just want justice. They want the facts and the evidence to come out.
Police say there is DNA evidence which links Charles to this crime. The 15-year-old is now set to be back in court on Monday. Reporting live in Miami, Ben Kennedy, Local 10 News.
New at 5, one day after the teenage suspect in the murder of a rabbi was granted bond, his attorney was back in court accusing the prosecution of withholding evidence. CBS 4's Natalia Zaya was at the hearing. She's live now at the Metro Justice Building in Miami with more. Natalia.
Well, the defense attorney filed a motion to compel the state to give up more information about the state's confidential informants and information about at least one officer who was speaking with at least one of them. The defense attorney is arguing that the information these informants gave actually helps his client. We also now know the trial date set in this high-profile murder case. The family of 15-year-old DeAndre Charles appeared at a court hearing Thursday as Charles' defense attorney, Adam Goodman, argued to the court that prosecutors need to release more information about the confidential informants who gave up details connected to the murder of Rabbi Joseph Raxin.
To be honest, I want to know how reliable this confidential informant is, because I'm hoping he is reliable. He was a reliable confidential informant because he gave up information of a lot of people, but not my client.
We'd ask that the officer's name not be placed on the record at this time.
Well, the state already gave out the officer's name, so...
Again, we ask that it not be placed on the record at this time.
The state suffered a blow Wednesday when Judge Jason Block put out his decision on last month's hearing, ordering that Charles be granted $300,000 bond. In the order, Judge Block found, in this case, the state has presented no direct evidence of the defendant's guilt. No witness has identified the defendant as the shooter, and indeed, there are no witnesses to the shooting at all. The murder weapon has not been found. While gun accessories or pieces were recovered from the scene, the defendant's fingerprints were not found on them, nor was his unique DNA profile. But the judge also wrote that the state has a higher burden of proof in that hearing than it will in a jury trial.
If you win or lose another hearing, then you would think, well, then the jury will always do what that happens. And, a jury could do whatever they want.
Despite the good news for Charles' family that he can be released on bond, so far they have not been able to come up with the $30,000 needed to get him out of jail. And I spoke very briefly with Rabbi Raxin's daughter today. She chose not to do an interview, noting that today is a holiday. Now, despite the concerns from one prosecutor who says she will be out of the country, the judge has set this trial for May 9th. Natalia Gazea, CBS 4 News.
To a huge announcement from the state attorney's office. They thought they had captured the person who murdered a rabbi, but now they're dropping the charges. CBS 4's Carrie Codd is working this story and spoke to the now former suspect. Carrie.
That's right. DeAndre Charles spent 11 months in jail accused of murdering Rabbi Joseph Raxin near this intersection in North Miami Beach. Initially, after the arrest, prosecutors said they felt their case was strong. But now they announced that as they dug deeper into the details, the case quickly fell apart.
16-year-old DeAndre Charles is a free man, no longer facing the weight of a murder charge against him in the shooting death of Rabbi Joseph Raxin in August 2014.
I was excited.
Charles spoke briefly at a news conference Tuesday after Miami-Dade prosecutors announced that the charges against him had been dropped. Prosecutors accused Charles of shooting Raxin in a botched robbery while the well-known New York rabbi was walking to a synagogue. He was in town visiting his daughter. At the time, prosecutors said the case against Charles was strong.
We're prepared. We feel we have a very good case.
But Charles's attorney, Adam Goodman, said the case fell apart quickly and cost the teen a year of his life.
He did not do this. He was not there that day. This was a travesty.
According to the state attorney closeout memo in the case fell apart for several reasons. DNA evidence against Charles on gun parts found at the scene and on a car possibly used in the crime diminished with enhanced testing at the crime lab. Also, it was believed that Charles's cell phone was pinging on a tower near the crime scene, but further investigation revealed it was actually pinging on the opposite side of the murder scene. An eyewitness said he saw Charles running from the crime scene from about 100 feet away and gave this sketch, a sketch Charles's attorneys lampooned on Tuesday.
If you look at it, it looked more like a Sesame Street character than it did DeAndre Charles.
Investigators also say the defense might have had a good argument for why Charles's DNA was on the gun pieces, because people apparently hid guns at his home. And then there's the issue of the gun used to kill the beloved rabbi. Apparently that weapon was used just hours before in an unsolved robbery that had no connection to DeAndre Charles. Prosecutors admitted the police knew for months about the gun being used in another crime, but did not inform the state.
That was something that the ball was dropped. And that was a pretty big piece of evidence. And
I already told you guys that he was innocent.
DeAndre's mother maintained that her son was at home at the time of the murder. Meanwhile, Charles said his goal is to go back to school.
Let's move on with life. Let bygones be bygones.
Charles's attorneys say they understand that with this new development, that makes it a very difficult situation for the family of Rabbi Raxin. And Charles's attorneys said they hope police and prosecutors figure out who murdered the rabbi. The state attorney's office says this case remains active and open. Live in North Miami Beach, Kerry Codd, CBS 4 News Tonight.
Miami-Dade had evidence teen did not murder rabbi but charged him anyway, lawsuit alleges. You know I'm going to say that again. Miami-Dade had evidence teen did not murder rabbi but charged him anyway, lawsuit alleges. The story was done in Miami News Time, January 21st, 2019, and this is how it reads. The case is one of the biggest black eyes in the history of the Miami-Dade Police Department and State's Attorney Catherine Fernandez-Rundle's administration. In 2015, local cops, elected officials, and Rundle stood at a lectern and declared that then 15-year-old DeAndre Charles had murdered Joseph Raskin, a prominent New York City rabbi. Rundle then revealed a utterly ridiculous witness-drawn sketch that looked more like a discarded Muppet character than a real human being. But roughly a year later, prosecutors were forced to admit Charles did not kill the rabbi. In an explosive lawsuit filed in federal court last Thursday, Charles' lawyers say they now have proved that both Rundle's office and the detective involved, Michael Brajic, possessed evidence from the beginning that proved Charles' innocence. Yet they charged the teen anyway and plastered his face on TV next to the humiliating sketch that later went so viral it became part of a Kevin Hart comedy routine. In short, the suit alleges the county could have and should have avoided ruining the life of an innocent 15-year-old by labeling him a murderer. According to the suit, Brajic, the police detective, had ample evidence that a group of young men was involved in the killing. He was repeatedly told that Charles was home with his family when a homicide occurred. All right, so we back. So what you see there is a story about the DeAndre Charles case that they originally accused the 15-year-old of killed in a rabbi named Joseph Raxin. Raxin, right? And we see that the state said it had a strong case, that they knew that they had their man. And so what you end up seeing, there was no evidence, there was no witness, there was no weapon. The DNA didn't match, right? The fingerprints, they had nothing. But yet, they were going to put this young man for murder. And when they finally gave him a bail, it was $300,000. But all the time, they knew this young man didn't do that. But see, when you have a system that is built on merit, right? In order for you to move up, you have to have so many arrests, make so many arrests, right? And so forth, and prosecuting, right? And convictions and all that. So again, in order to make, again, that which is, to say, the commander or whoever's, whoever is in charge, you have to make sure that when you're in charge that it looks like things are running efficiently, running good, right? And so in order to make the quotas and the numbers, you just end up, what happened is that people end up getting caught in the muck and mire that have nothing to do with it in order to just resolve a case. And so here it was. We understand that a person of, let's say, rat skins situation, because again, being a rabbi, so again, you're under the Jewish persuasion. And we understand that under that, people are going to go all out trying to resolve, because again, of the power that is possessed by that particular community. In order to quell them, to make them happy, you had to come with somebody. So again, as you heard, the family was calling him a thug. See, you didn't get the conviction yet, but you had already said he was convicted and you called him a thug. And the one thing that really killed it was the fact that, again, whoever it was that was their informant, their secret informant, who the one came up with that funny ass sketch, like somebody was mocking, right? You still don't know who it was that came up with this sketch and who identified that, right? But again, they didn't want that stricken on the record, right? So there was this mystery person who we supposed to take word for, and then we would put their name on it after we get everything done, right? So at least that his lawyer stuck to that point, right? And it was the detective that knew that they had the evidence all along. But again, it didn't matter, because again, it's not your child. And what the hell do you care? He's a nigga anyway, right? How the hell do I care, right? See, that kind of stuff. And then you wonder why the community with black people and municipalities don't have a good relationship. Because for every person that you do get a conviction for that might be legitimate, there may be many more that will be able to say that they've been wrongfully arrested, wrongfully about how that. But again, it used to be, well, you know, the old thing to say, hey, niggas always saying everybody in jail say they innocent. Oh, that was some kind of running joke. No, that should be true. And you know it be true. A lot of people who got their stripes and stars got it based on the simple fact that they wouldn't give 2 cent shit whether you was guilty in time, as long as they get the conviction, right? Well, don't they got a saying that the state can convict a mug on a ham sandwich? Don't they say some shit like that? They can convict a mug on a ham sandwich if they wanted it, right? So once in a while things fall out, and again, he was a young man, but again, he's already been crucified publicly. You skewered his face with this sketch, said that he was killing people. You're not going to be able to take that out of most people's mind psychologically, even the fact that now that you're now dropping the case. But they were slickly to say, did you hear it? Did they slickly say he was still accused? He should have never been, because he was never. See, again, Dracula, you can't see yourself in the mirror. You don't care. Now, again, whatever done transpired in history, again, like you tell us, get over it. When are you going to ever get over it? The whiteologist is talking. When are you going to ever get over, when you tell us to get over about whatever happened in history, when are you going to ever get over what happened in history? Since you don't make no light about it, then we won't talk about it either, right? So, but again, you harbor these things, and it don't matter at the expense of the other people. And it's just like, okay, you do what you do. Again, the inevitable falls on all of us. No one exempt. You could watch 6 Day, right? Even in the movie with 6 Day with Arnold Schwarzenegger, when they was in there, and the dude that looked like Bill Gates was making the bodies and shit, right? That shit was seemed like it was forever. It was a no ending to the manufacturing of bodies until he was dying, and the body that he needed to get to was fucked up too, and he couldn't get to it. So whatever happened, he still died. And Arnold was like, "Well, see, you fucked yourself, right? Yeah, right. He fucked himself." See, that's how this situation going here. See, you thinking of longevity and that forever, but you can't read the Creator's hands, and y'all keep doing stuff, and it's like, man, dude, can you see yourself? You can't see yourself, huh? Or you just say, I don't give no fuck. Well, okay, you keep riding that one. Keep riding it, because I keep telling you, okay, now just imagine here, let's just say this. You say that you are going into depopulation, right? Because you having problems with procreation, right? So that means your tap is running out, right? Now the other side, that tap don't run out. It only has to be forced and Planned Parenthood and poisoned out and killed out, incarcerated out and all that, right? So they just say death-wise, and then there's the other side of the inevitable. How many niggas on the other side? How many niggas is gonna be on the other side? But y'all don't feel that though. You see everything. See, that's why they said there's the physical man and there's the spiritual man. The physical man can't see the spiritual side. He only see what he think, what is tangible he can feel and touch. You can't see the spiritual side. You ain't even thought about that. Well, go ahead, keep it on up. I'm just here to tell it what it is. Take it or leave it alone. Moving on. Moving on. So, you know, again, as we're going to keep on the theme tonight, right? We're going to keep on this theme here again, because again, it's always that, right? That don't never change, because again, people all changing, but one people ain't changing. So I guess same old, same old. It's a SOS, same old, right? Well, back in the days, my ancestors, when they were trying to maneuver, we can even go back to parents and grandparents, right? They had a particular way, again, due to the heightenedness of anger and hatred and all that stuff. And here was people who just wanted to be able to go to and fro, right? Just want to be able to get from one place A to B, C, and D, and get back home safely. But you know, people had this whole thing about, well, we don't want your patriotism, we don't want your money, we don't want you nowhere around us. So somebody came up with the ideal of a creation that was beneficial for people of their time. And it resurged itself again, right? So he said, well, what you talking about, Mr. Blowy? Well, let me show you this, and we'll be right back. Check this out, y'all.
Two companies gave me the maps and the itinerary and this thing.
The Negro Motorist Green Book.
Yeah, it lists all the places coloreds could stay down south, like if, you know, traveling while black.
That's Viggo Mortensen and Linda Cardellini in the Golden Globe-winning movie Green Book. The movie's title is a reference to the real Green Book, a traveler's guide back in a hostile time, which some people still remember all too well. Our cover story is reported by Martha Teichner.
The fabulous Miss Mary Wilson.
Watching Mary Wilson, feeling the love at New York's glamorous Cafe Carlyle. It's hard to imagine what she felt at the age of 19.
But my heart can't take you no more.
A newly minted Supreme, just out of high school, on her first ever road tour with a regular who's who of Motown stars. Stevie Wonder,
I really, really love
Mary Wells, The Temptations, and others. 45 performers traveling by bus, confronted by hate in the still segregated South.
We were getting off the bus, and there were gunshots.
And they were shooting at the bus?
Oh, yeah, we had several holes in the bus. You know, your parents had told you, be careful, da 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 da. You knew about the segregation. But I mean, the gunshot sort of brought it right into your face and saying, you could be killed.
Strange fruit hanging.
It was this chilling fact of life, the racism that in 1936 inspired the Negro Motorist Green Book. Victor Green, a postal worker who lived in Harlem, began publishing a guide to businesses that welcomed African-American travelers.
You need to be careful on the road. Old Jim Crow won't let people like us stop just anywhere.
In each year's edition, a warning. Carry your Green Book with you. You may need it.
It just makes me wonder and make me think about today.
At the National Museum of African American History and Culture in Washington, D.C., visitors can experience the not-so-long-gone era of the Green Book.
I remember as a little child going down south from Detroit, and my parents had to be strategic as to where they stopped.
It was after the Depression, before the war. The auto culture was really burgeoning. There were more jobs for Black people.
Candace Taylor is a cultural historian whose book about the Green Book will be published this fall.
By the 40s, the second wave of the Great Migration was underway. And so you had 1.5 million Black people leaving the South during that time.
At risk if they owned nice cars.
His dad worked for the railroad, had a good job, and his mother was sitting in the front seat.
Taylor tells the story of her own stepfather's family being stopped and relying on this tried-and-true subterfuge for avoiding trouble.
So the sheriff comes to the door and says, you know, who's this car? Where are you going? Who are these people with you? And his father says, you know, this is my employer's car. He looked to his wife and he said, and she's the maid, and this is her son. And then the next question was, well, where's your hat? Meaning the chauffeur's hat. And he said, it's hanging right in the back, officer.
Essentials for driving in and out of the Jim Crow South, that chauffeur's hat and the Green Book.
The Green Book was like a Bible. You did not leave home without it. I think this was taken in Louisville.
Alice Clay Broadwater relied on it. She was a teacher then, traveling with her lawyer husband and small children between Boston and the South.
Black travelers in those days, in the 50s, had to carry the Green Book if they needed to stay overnight someplace, or if they wanted to know where they could eat.
Unless, of course, there were no Green Book listings en route.
It was not only frightening, it was very unsafe. If you're stopping on the side of the road, you know, you can't really sleep.
So you'd pull off the road to take a nap?
Yes.
Or to sleep?
Yes.
Because there was no place else?
Absolutely.
Get your kicks on Route 66.
Route 66 was a huge hit for Nat King Cole. But here's the irony. For Black travelers looking for places to stay along its more than 2,400 miles, good luck. Green Book sites were scarce. So-called sundown towns were plentiful.
You'd see a sign on the way in.
What would it say?
N-word. Don't let the sun set on you here. You could have a Green Book, but you could still find yourself in a sundown town at the wrong time, and sometimes you'd be escorted out of town by law enforcement. Sometimes you'd be harassed or chased, or worse.
Often a safe place to stay.
This was one of the rooms?
Yes, this is it.
Was a room in someone's house. Since 2014, this historical marker has stood outside a Green Book-listed tourist home in Columbia, South Carolina.
You've got all kinds of pictures here.
Run by Reggie Scott's mother and aunt.
That's you as
That's
a
me,
kid?
yeah.
89 now, Scott grew up in the Harriet M. Cornwell tourist home and became a musician because of the players who stayed here.
Cab Calloway was my greatest excitement. He came in on us.
And
Tripped.
He was here in this house?
Yes, Cab was here.
Wow.
If there's one common denominator we found doing this story, it is the musicians. The unbelievably famous names who were also victims of segregation.
Duke Ellington and Billie Holiday stayed here. A lot of times they were performing downtown where they were welcome to perform but not welcome to stay.
The Rossonian Hotel and Lounge in Denver,
That's amazing.
now undergoing renovation, was one of more than 80 businesses in the area listed in the Green Book.
These places carry a spirit with them, you know, which is why it's so important that they're still here. I was scouting about 30 sites a day.
Candace Taylor put 23,000 miles on her car during just one of her trips around the country, documenting more than 9,600 of the sites.
If I had to guess, I'd say about at least 85% were Black-owned. But there were sites like Charlie's Sandwich Shop in Boston that was in Southie that was owned by a white man.
Charlie Poulos, a Greek immigrant, opened the restaurant in 1927, and with his partner, Christy Mangiarides, served all races, possibly the first restaurant in Boston to do so.
Was there a backlash?
There was, yeah. There was some pushback.
Damian Marcianti bought Charlie's in 2017.
The original owners did not care. They just were welcome to everybody. If you didn't like it, you didn't come in.
It didn't hurt that the Black Pullman Porters Union had its headquarters upstairs. The railroad workers spread the word about Charlie's even before it began listing in the Green Book in 1947. And of course, the jazz greats read their Green Books and came to Charlie's.
Duke Ellington, Cab Calloway, Sammy Davis Jr. He used to tap dance out in front of the diner.
As times changed, so did the Green Book. For sale by subscription and at Esso gas stations, in its heyday, it sold 2 million copies a year. But in the 1948 edition, Victor Green wrote, "There will be a day sometime in the near future when this guide will not have to be published. This is when we as a race will have equal opportunities and privileges in the United States."
And then that day comes, and he never lives to see it because he dies in 1960.
In 1964, the Civil Rights Act was passed, mandating the end of segregation. Publication of the Green Book ceased in 1967. It was largely forgotten, its true legacy underestimated.
Walk with me.
It's so important that we look at the Green Book not just as a historic travel guide, not as just something that we needed in the past.
Walk with me.
But what the Green Book teaches us is about the resilience and the courage of what Black people were able to do and accomplish in spite of the circumstances and everything that happened.
Come on and walk with me, Lord. Come on and take a walk with me.
The Negro Motorist Green Book. The Negro Motorist Green Book, at times styled the Negro Motorist Green Book or titled the Negro Traveler's Green Book, was an annual guidebook for African American road trippers, commonly referred to simply as the Green Book. It was originated and published by New York City mailman Victor Hugo Green from 1936 to 1966 during the era of Jim Crow laws. When open and often legally prescribed, discrimination against non-whites was widespread. Although pervasive racial discrimination and poverty limited Black car ownership, the emerging African American middle class bought automobiles as soon as they could, but faced a variety of dangers and inconveniences along the road, from refusal of food and lodging to arbitrary arrests. In response, Green wrote his guide to services and places relatively friendly to African Americans, eventually expanding its coverage from the New York area to much of the North America, as well as founding a travel agency. Many Black Americans took to driving, in parts to avoid segregation on public transportation. As the writer George Schuler puts in the 1930s, all Negroes who can do so purchase an automobile as soon as possible in order to be free of discomfort, discrimination, segregation, and insult. Black Americans employed as athletes, entertainers, and salesmen also traveled frequently for work purposes. African American travelers faced hardship, such as white-owned businesses refusing to serve them or repair their vehicles, being refused accommodations or food by white-owned hotels, and threats of physical violence and forcible expulsion from white-only sundown towns. Green founded and published the Green Book to avoid such problems, compiling resources to give the Negro travelers information that will keep him from running into difficulties, embarrassments, and to make his trip more enjoyable. From a New York focus, first edition published in 1936, Green expanded the work to cover much of the North American, including most of the United States and parts of Canada, Mexico, the Caribbean, and Bermuda. The Green Book became the Bible of black travel during Jim Crow, enabling black travelers to find lodging, businesses, and gas stations that would serve them along the road. It was little known outside the African American communities. Shortly after passage of the Civil Rights Acts of 1964, which outlawed the types of racial discrimination that had made the Green Book necessary, publication ceased and it fell into obscurity. There has been a revived interest in it in this earliest 21st century in connection with the studies of black travels during the Jim Crow era. 4 issues, 1960, 1947, 1940, 1954, and 1963, have been republished in facsimiles and have sold well. All right, so got a little lesson there for those who didn't know. The Green Book. You ever hear about your family talk about the Green Book? Right? It was a book that had to be something you had to have, as again, kind of like a Bible. Right? It was to get you from point A to point B and C and D, because again, it's not like today for those who don't know. See, again, you got to ask yourself, those people who got so much disdain and hate for us, but as much as we've gone through, much as pressure and oppression you have put on us, and the things we had to do, just the things that you could never foresee or understand fully, you just do what you do. But here was a people who travel, again, maybe you didn't want their money. And again, you have the right, if you have a business, to choose. I believe that. You have the right. Again, you make a business. Nobody should be able to force you to have and serve if that's what your choosing is. But to put people at their life, because if they should stop at a place or tell them they had to be out there before sundown, and we will do the sundown after this, right? So a lot of people today can imagine the way you get in your car and you drive to and fro. But again, those things are still there, even though you may not know, because sometimes you could be in areas that police pull you over because they're there to maintain and to keep peace in certain areas. So when you're black and you're driving in certain areas, you will get pulled over, right? See, because that history is lost. But our ancestors have to have a book to know where they could go. Just imagine those who from the old school. We used to do trips in the car, like the Cadillac, right? The Deuce and a Quarter, right? Everybody piling up in them cars, and you're doing the trip from the city going back down south, right? And knew exactly what roads to take. They knew what place, because it's like you just go anywhere and you just, use the washroom, because again, you got funny style people, right? So this book, going back in the 40s all the way up through to the 60s, was something that had to be. Again, if you've seen the Berry Gordy story or the Motown story where they showed they was all on the bus and then they got pulled over and the whole thing. If you see the 5 heartbeats, why don't you sing for me, right? All that, right? Remember all that? Because again, they had to have those types of information because it was dangerous. It seems like we're starting to go back to that. Are we going to have to reinvent maybe they brought this back up because maybe they telling you again, huh? Maybe they saying it again that, hey, some kind of book, so you know where you can go and where you can't. Because again, just like the story that we did in Oregon, remember the brother that went to the hotel? That was a guest at the hotel. And yet he still was escorted out with police even though he was a patronized customer, right? So obviously that would have not have been one of the hotels in the Green Book for him to go, right? See, maybe these things are still more prevalent than you know. They just don't say it because, again, politically correct. They want to act a certain way, but in the true heart, in the crevice of who they really are, this is who they are. They have always been. Now, does that mean all of them? Maybe not. Again, it's not my job to try to figure out. Again, if I went to the store and I'm going to buy apples and there was a crate of apples, and if I get to the top and most of them are rotten, I'm just going to assume the rest of them are rotten. I'm not going to go and sift through there to try to figure out if all any good or not. I'm just going to assume they're all. Guess what those other apples are going to do? They're going to have to jump out the barrel and say, hey, I'm good. Pick me, right? You get what I'm saying, right? All right. So, again, that was a little history for some of those people who never heard that. Again, see how, again, I'm getting to another part of this show, even though they got me suppressed. Again, I'm the most hated show in the black corner of the internet, and there's a reason for that, right? So, what else I got in the bag for y'all? All right, I got a couple more things in here. Well, check it out. They talked about this, right? They talked about Sundown, right? You heard that, right? Let's see. Let's see. Can I go back to back with that? Let me see if I can go back to back. I think I got back to back, right? Hold on for a second. Let me check something before I do that. Because I want to check this, right? 1 second. Let's see what this is. Hold on. Let me make sure that's right. No, that's not it. Okay. All right. No, we're going to do that next. Okay. No, we won't do that. We're going to do this here. All right. So, going to do this here instead. All right, so we're going to give you a little history onto that Sundown. Again, that was mentioned, right? So let me go ahead and play and see if I can get this to work. See if it's going to work. Might do it. No, going to do it. Okay, hold on. I know I had you working.
Listen, we'd already gone off the air here on MHP. But friend of the show.
Hold on. Good Lord, man. Slow your roll. Do what you're told to do. I know they in the background doing what they doing. I know that. All right, so let's see if we can get it to do it. No, it's not going to do it that way, huh? All right, so I'm going to have to do it this way. Then check this out. Should be right back, y'all.
By the time Missouri Governor Jay Nixon went on television yesterday to announce the midnight curfew for residents of Ferguson, we'd already gone off the air here on MHP. But friend of the show, Dorian Warren, who was with me at my table yesterday, stuck around and joined my colleague TJ Holmes at his table during the news conference. After it ended, Dorian weighed in on the historical precedent to what the governor had to say.
What you just said, Raul, when the sun goes down, here is the historical context for this. Meaning, if you were black in an all-white town, you could not be in that town when the sun goes down, and it was a threat to your safety.
Historian and author James Lowen, the man who literally wrote the book on sundown towns, uncovered thousands of these towns that existed in the United States throughout the 20th century. By some estimates, as many as 10,000 sundown towns had sprung up across the country by 1970. Some were the warning to African Americans not to let the sun go down on you was an unspoken rule that spread by reputation. Others, where the warning was explicitly spelled out in signs posted along the highway or at the town or on the county line. But all of them, whites-only spaces where being black after dark could mean arrest, harassment, assault, or worse. In 1968, 21-year-old Carol Jenkins was selling encyclopedias door to door in the sundown town of Martinsville, Indiana, when she was stabbed in the chest with a screwdriver and left to die in the street. So for African-American travelers, making the choice about where to stop for food, gas, or a bathroom break, or rest for the night was potentially a life or death decision. And it is in part what prompted the publication of this, the Negro Motorist Green Book. This handy guide let African Americans on the road know where they could find safe harbor and where they need to steer clear of the threat of white violence in sundown towns. The Green Book started to become obsolete when the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 outlawed racial discrimination in public accommodations. But that history of restricting travel and access to public spaces for African Americans seemed very present last night in Ferguson, where the streets, the people were warned to stay out after midnight in a town they normally call home.
All right. Sundown towns, right? They say history kind of repeats itself, right? You know, the way things are happening again every time, pretty much every time I do a show, we're talking about certain things. I mean, it seems like things are reverting in some kind of form or fashion. Some of us would like to think better, right? Some people want to give some people the benefit of the doubt, but again, it said if it walk like a duck, quack like a duck, it must be a duck, right? And so it must be, you can't be mad because certain people observe and then they call it out. Again, that's just who you are, but don't be mad. That's who you are by nature. People who gave so much, who, allow you to have the opulence and the freedom of whatever it is that may be, because again, from this point of view, I guess we still don't know what that is. Again, we're going to go with the whole thing of 1965 or 63 and talking about we just getting civil rights. Some of us is first and second generations of being free. It's kind of like emancipation, right? Those who was at the time of emancipation that came from 1863 to 65, right? The first generation there's a lot of us who are just first generation from civil rights. There's some of our people in there, they didn't have that. But when others came, you was the first ones to have rights. Think about that. Think about that. And then here's people who act as if like we had the privilege they so-called had since they've been in the inception. And a lot of them came later. Some of their lineage come, what they say, Ellis Island, all right? Now you still brand new, but you hold that old red. But then we're talking about going back since our people been here, right? So we still brand new. And yet, look how everybody acting. Like, damn, well, maybe that's a testament to the greatness. They don't take long for people who you've been doing things to, and they could just come out of it. And all you going to, because again, maybe, is that what it is? Maybe just seeing, sometimes people can see, like say for instance, if, you be around kids, and if you lived a little bit, you can see the potential in a kid. You say, man, we're going to be smart, going to be, going to be good, or this and that. You can see the potential. And you just know if it just keep it and it stays on the right course, it can blossom. And maybe that's what's angering the shit out of so many people. Because at one time, again, when they look at history, they want to go to just Gone with the Wind. Again, when it was a way that you keep your eye down and keep you and subject you to this, that made you feel important. But see, for some odd reason, if you start seeing the people who saying now, I want to be independent. I want to pull myself by the bootstrap. I actually don't need your help. I actually want to do this. And that's threatening. Do I need to say that again? That's become threatening. So people are angry because, again, some people just never had no skill. Some people just don't have genetics to be good or great. but you're around it and surrounded by it, and when you see it, it makes you angry. Because go back to the story where the dude that was wielding the gun with the teenager, niggers suck, nigger sucks, niggers suck? Really? Take the niggas out of the shit niggas best in, and what do you got? Take them out. If you take, what is that? Take that son of a bitch off the field right now. Take that son of a bitch off. Huh? Take them off. And what would happen to this? See, it's imitation. You ever ate some imitation ass cheese? That's some nasty shit, ain't it? Right? Ever got some nasty ass, imitated slice? Some of y'all don't know about that shit. You know that shit, when you ain't had no money and you get that shit, it be saying, it look like the Kraft American cheese, but it be really a lot more orange and shit and got that plasticky ass taste. Well, that's what happened if you take and extract that shit out of there, right? But as much as you want to say niggas ain't shit and niggas suck and all this shit, really? Extract everything they have put in. What do you got? You would have shit. You couldn't build shit. Let's keep that shit 100. The money you think you got, you couldn't have got it if you wasn't able to put it on my back. Wouldn't get off my ancestry. You could have got it. So what can you build? What historically can we say that you did all on your own? Nothing, 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 nothing. So the one you know that they gave the mess again, they said that old saying, he who I know I did wrong, I hate him more because I know I done him wrong. And that's all this is. You done us wrong, and you angry because you know we done wrong. But again, the compassion and the spirit that the Creator give us, he don't even make us come at you. Because he said, I'm going to take care of that. I got this. Remember that? I got this. I got this. He got this. Don't worry about it. Let him do what he going to do. He got this. So y'all keep on what you're doing. Moving on. Moving on. So since we're going to go here, and I'm going to go here, matter of fact, let me go look at who out in the crowd, because this here, ain't going to be no explanation for this after this is done. Let me see who all out here. Let me see who out in here. I got Indigenous King in the house. Peace to the family. Finally caught you live. Thought you went away from the bruh. Thought you unsubscribed and everything. What's good? I'm glad. Got a smile on my face. Good to see you here. Right? Appreciate that. And hope you gave me a like or a dislike. It's all good. Peace to you and your fam as well. Now, this here. All right. Look what they brought out today. Well, again, as I said yesterday, actually, I did exactly on the birthday of the ancestor, right? I went on January 15th. I did to commemorate it. Again, pretty much you can't do a birthday because all you're going to be doing is showing about him being assassinated. That's what you leave for that, right? So today, as I always do when I'm reading and surfing and reading, guess what they showed today? Man. Well, we at the, let's see where I'm at. When this done, it'll be the 2-hour mark. But I won't say nothing after that because everything is going to be self-explanatory and done. And again, I want to thank you all for being here, for coming by, hanging out, giving a like, dislike, whether you're angry or not. Well, that's your choice. You're entitled to that. But they came today and they showed this. Would be 51 years, a little shy of, because April 4th, 1968 to now, about 50 years, about 9 months and some, right? About that, about 50 years, 9 months. Look what they came out and they said. Check this out, y'all. Check this out. Hold on. Hold on. See, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about right there. See, you're always doing that, huh? I throw that monkey wrench in it all the time, huh? That's all right. Let me do it again. Let's do this one more time, right? From the top. Hit it. Try from the top one more time.
Tonight, our nation celebrates one of its most inspirational leaders and activists by honoring the Reverend Dr. Martin.
Slow your roll, Chief. Slow your roll. We want to make sure it gets seen. This might be the end of Mr. Blows Your Mind show after this one. This might do it, y'all. This might be it. The King you called the last might be the last one, Chief. This one might do it. This one might be the one. All right, so here we go.
Celebrates one of its most inspirational leaders and activists by honoring the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. We know all that he came and dealt with racial fairness and lost his life in that fight. But did you know that there are investigations that have gone on about how actually he died? See, most of us think that we know exactly how he died, how he was shot, and it was an open and shut case. Well, guess what? This is an amazing tale that you're about to hear from Michelle Greenstein about what has been uncovered regarding his death. I'm gonna hand it to you and let you take it away, because in my conversations with you thus far, I have been drop-jawed listening to you.
And so was I. I actually spoke earlier today to Dr. William Pepper. He actually, on behalf of Coretta Scott King and the King family, filed a civil suit in the case of the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King. Now, this is the only trial that's ever been held about this assassination because, as we know, James Earl Ray, after he pled guilty, meant there was no trial. So this is the only trial that's ever been held. Now, we're all familiar with the official story of this lone gunman, right, in 67.
James Earl Ray shot him.
He was in jail for armed robbery. He somehow escaped.
Admitted to it.
Right. But what's interesting is that he pled guilty, but he didn't confess. And actually, in these court transcripts, he says over and over, I did not confess to killing King. And he says he only did so because he feared for his life. He and William Pepper told me that the only reason James pled guilty is because it was the only way to save his life. Now, he did this as a last resort, and he was actually told by his lawyer, Percy Foreman, that he should take the guilty plea because that's how he was going to get a new lawyer. So he saw this as his only way to get rid of this bad lawyer and get a new lawyer. And interestingly enough, he filed for an appeal days afterward and tried to get a new trial. So like I said, I spoke to Dr. Pepper earlier today. Here's what he had to say about the way Dr. Martin Luther King was actually killed.
Wow.
He wasn't killed from the bullet that hit him on the balcony. He was taken to the St. Joseph's Hospital, and he was killed in the emergency room of St. Joseph's Hospital by the chief of neurosurgery, Dr. Breen Bland, who came in when they were all working on him in the emergency room, and he said, get out of here, let that die. And as they moved out of the room, the last one out was a surgical nurse, Lula Mae Shelby, and when she heard them gathering up spit in their lungs to spit on Martin's body lying on a bed there. Then she saw Dr. Bland take the catheters out of Martin's body and take the pillow from under his head and put it over his face and suffocate him. And that's how Martin King died. That's how he was really assassinated. Now, he might have died anyway from the bullet wounds, but he didn't. He was still alive and still breathing. The chief neurosurgeon, he intervened and he made sure that death would result.
Wow.
Right? My jaw was on the floor. Now, Dr. Pepper knows this because the son of the nurse, Lula Mae Shelby, who died, but before she died told her family, the son of this nurse told Dr. Pepper under oath. And when Dr. Pepper confronted a member of the Dixie Mafia, he said, yes, this happened, and actually that the chief of surgery was their family doctor, and that 3 weeks before the assassination, he visited them and said, hey, if the bullet doesn't kill him, make sure he goes to St. Joseph's because we will make sure that he dies. Now, let's talk about this case, okay? This was the civil suit in 1999 where Pepper represented the King family, and that really made the family feel like they had closure, and like I said, it was the only trial ever held. The Memphis jury in this case decided that local state and federal governments were liable for King's death, and that this was a real conspiracy, a conspiracy between the U.S. military, the Memphis PD, and Dixie Mafia, these crime figures in Memphis, Tennessee.
This is just for the audience.
Right.
This is a civil case that was brought, much like the O.J. case.
Right, where
where
a jury
they couldn't find him guilty here, but finally when a civil jury heard it, they came out with a
It was the only trial, yes, and there was 30 days of trial, and over 70 witnesses were heard. And Dr. Pepper told me earlier today that it took the jury less than an hour to decide after these 30 days
that this was a true conspiracy.
Correct.
Where others may have been involved.
Correct.
Other than the person who was accused.
And that James Earl Ray was the fall man, and that he was unwittingly, unknowingly part of this conspiracy. And the real shooter, I gotta say this even though we can't get to the whole story, was Frank Strouser. He was a Memphis police officer, the best shot in the Memphis PD, and he was the one who actually fired the fatal shot.
Hey YouTube, thanks for checking out our channel. We hope you enjoyed the video. We have tons of content for you just like this. For more of RT America's one-of-a-kind news and analysis, be sure to subscribe and never stop questioning more.
The plot to kill Martin Luther King survived shooting, was murdered in hospital. You know I'm going to say that again. The plot to kill Martin Luther King survived shooting, was murdered in hospital. Let us commemorate Martin Luther King Day, January 21st, 2019. This article was first published by GR on September the 5th, 2016. For one bright moment back in the late 1960s, we actually believed that we could change our country. We had identified the enemy. We saw it up close, we had this measured, and we were hopeful that we could prevail. The enemy was hollow where we had substance. All that substance was destroyed by assassin's bullet. William Pepper, page 15, The Plot to Kill King. The revelations are stunning. The media indifference is predictable. Thanks to the nearly 4-decade investigation by human rights lawyer William Pepper, it is now clear once and for all that Martin Luther King was murdered in a conspiracy that was instigated by then FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover, and that also involved the United States military, the Memphis Police Department, and Dixie's Mafia, crime figures in Memphis, Tennessee. These and many more incredible details of the King assassination are contained in the trilogy of volumes by Pepper, culminating with his latest and final book on the subject, The Plot to Kill King. He previously wrote Orders to Kill King in 1995 and An Act of State, 2003. With virtually no help from the mainstream media and very little from the justice system, Pepper was able to piece together what really happened on April 4, 1968 in Memphis, right down to who gave the order and supplied the money, how the patsies was chosen, and who actually pulled the trigger. Without this information, the truth about King's assassination would have been buried and lost to history. Witnesses would have died off, taking their secrets with them, and the official lie that King was the victim of a racist lone gunman named James Earl Ray would have remained fact. Instead, we know that Ray took the fall for a murder he did not commit. We know that a member of the Memphis Police Department fired the fatal shot, and that 2 military sniper teams that were part of the 902nd Military Intelligence Group were sent to Memphis as backups should the primary shooter fail. We have access to the fascinating account of how Pepper came to meet Colonel John Downey, the man in charge of the military part of the plot, and Lyndon Johnson, former Vietnam briefer. We also learned that as part of the operations, photos were actually taken of the shooting and that Pepper came very close to getting his hands on those photos. Unfortunately, the mainstream media has ignored all of these revelations and continues to label Ray as King's lone assassin. In fact, Pepper chronicles and details how a disinformation campaign has featured the collaboration of many mainstream journalists over almost half a century. He says he suspects that those orchestrating the cover-up, which continues to this day, are no longer concerned with what he writes about the subject. I'm really basically harmless, I think, to the power structure, Pepper said in an interview. And the most stunning revelation in the plot to kill King, which some may question because the account is secondhand, is that King was still alive when he arrived at St. Joseph's Hospital and that he was killed by a doctor who was supposed to be trying to save his life. That is probably the most shocking aspect of the book, that final revelation on how this great man was taken from us. Pepper says, by the way, when I quoted Pepper as having said something I mean in our interview, I'm quoting from the book. I'll indicate that. The hospital story was told Pepper by a man named Jonathan Shelby, whose mother, Lula Mae Shelby, had been a surgical aide at St. Joseph's that night. Shelby told Pepper the story of how his mother came home the morning after the shooting. She hadn't been allowed to go home that night before, and gathered the family together. He remembers her saying to them, "I can't believe they took his life." She described Chief of Surgery Dr. Breen Bland entering the emergency room with two men in suits. Seeing doctors working on King, Bland commanded, "Stop working on that nigger and let him die. Now, all of you get out of here, right now. Everybody, get out." Johnston Shelby says his mother describes hearing the sound of the three men sucking up saliva into their mouths and then spitting. Lula Mae described to her family that she looked over her shoulder as she was leaving the room and saw that the breathing tube had been removed from King and that Bland was holding a pillow over his head. The book contains the entire disposition given by Johnston Shelby to Pepper, so readers can judge for themselves whether they think Shelby is credible, as Pepper believes he is. In fact, a second invaluable source was Ron Atkins, whose father, Russell Atkins Sr., was a local Dixie Mafia gangster and conspirator in the planning of the assassination. Even though he died a year before it took place, Ron told Pepper he had overheard Bland, who was his family's doctor, tell his father that if King did survive the shooting, he had to be taken to St. Joseph's and nowhere else, as Pepper described it. Ron, who was just 16 when the shooting took place, was apparently taken everywhere by his father in those days, and he was able to recount many details of what happened as the assassination was planned and carried out. "I definitely found him credible," Pepper said. "I found him troubled. I found him disturbed in a lot of ways by things that went on earlier in his life." His disposition, also contained in the book, which Pepper explained was important so that readers could judge the statement for themselves. "What I wanted to do was to make sure that the entire disposition of these critical moments and this critical information was there, so that one could go and read the disposition and see that I was being accurate," Pepper says. Besides describing what he heard Bland tell his father, Ron Atkins describes the many visits made to Russell Sr. by Clyde Tolson, J. Edgar Hoover's right-hand man, known to Ron as Uncle Clyde. The high-level FBI official often delivered cash to Elder Atkins for jobs, and he and his associates would carry out on behalf of Hoover. Among those, the younger Atkins said were paid to supply information about the activities of Martin Luther King were the Reverend Samuel Billy Cowles and Jesse Jackson. The basics of the official story. If you seek out any information from a mainstream source about James Earl Ray, you'll find him described as the killer of Martin Luther King, just as Lee Harvey Oswald and Sirhan Sirhan are labeled assassins in the murder of John and Robert Kennedy. But once you read any of all of Pepper's 3 books of the King slaying, you'll see very clear that Ray is not a killer at all. Instead, he was a petty criminal who was a perfect follower. Like Oswald and Sirhan, Ray was set up to take the fall for assassination that originated within the American deep state. In fact, Pepper said he's convinced that knowledge of the plot went all the way to the top. The whole thing would have been part of Lyndon Johnson's playbook, Pepper said. I think Johnson knew about this. As the official story of the shooting goes, at 5:50 p.m. on April 4th, Cowles knocked on the door of room 306 of the Lorraine Motel to let King and the rest of his party know that they were running late for a planned dinner at Cowles' home. Cowles then walked about 60 feet down the balcony, where he remained even after King came out of the room at about 6 p.m. Although Cowles has maintained ever since that he spent that last hour in the room, Pepper has proven otherwise. Members of a militant black organization group, the Invaders, who were also staying in the hotel because of King's visit, were told shortly before the shooting by a member of the motel staff that their room would no longer be paid for by the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, and that they had to leave immediately. When they asked who had given this order, they were told it was Jesse Jackson. At the time of the shooting, Jackson was waiting down by the swimming pool. Ron Atkins also identified Jackson as the person who called the owner of the Lorraine Motel and demanded that King be moved from more secure inner courtyard room to an exposed room on the second floor facing the street. The Memphis Police Department usually formed a detail of black officers to protect King when he was in town, but did not this time. Emergency tax support units were pulled back from the Lorraine to the fire station, which overlooked the motel. Pepper also learned that the only 2 black members of the Memphis Fire Department had been told the day before the shooting not to report for work the next day at the fire station. And Black Detective Ed Reddit was told an hour before the shooting to stay home because a threat had been made on his life. Just about a minute after King exited his room, a single shot was fired and the bullet ripped through King's jaw and spinal cord, dropping him immediately. The shot appeared to come from across Mulberry Street. King was rushed to the hospital where he was pronounced dead just after 7 p.m. According to the official story, the shot was fired by Ray from the bathroom of a rooming house above a bar called Jim's Grill, which backed on to Mulberry and faced onto South Main Street. But, as Pepper investigation proves, the shot actually came from the bushes located in between the rooming house and the street. In fact, the only witness who placed Ray at the scene was a falling down drunk named Charles Stevens, who later did not recognize Ray in the photograph and who cab driver James McCraw had refused to transport a short time before because he was too intoxicated. The bushes that concealed the shooters were conveniently trimmed the day after the shooting, giving a false impression that a shooter could not have been concealed there. Several witnesses, including journalist Earl Caldwell and King's Memphis driver Solomon Jones, described seeing the shot come from the bushes and not from the bathroom of the rooming house, as the official story states. Another casualty of King's murder was cab driver Buddy Butler, who reported that he saw a man running from the scene right after the shot, going south on Mulberry Street and jumping into a police car. This would turn out to be MPD's Lieutenant Earl Clark. Butler reported this to this dispatcher and later to fellow cab driver Louis Ward. Butler was interviewed at the Yellow Cab Company later that evening by police. Ward was told the next day that Butler had either fallen or was pushed to his death from a speeding car on the Memphis-Arkansas bridge. The owner of Jim Grill's Lloyd Jowers would later admit to being part of the conspiracy to kill King, and he would be found responsible, along with various government agencies, for the killing in the 1999 civil lawsuit by the King's family, which was represented by Pepper. The King family got enormous comfort out of the results of that trial and the evidence that came forward from that, Pepper says. Betty Spates, a waitress at Jim's Grill and girlfriend of Jowers, said she saw him rush into the back of the grill through the back door seconds after the shot, white as a ghost and holding a rifle, which he then wrapped in a tablecloth and hid on a shelf under the counter. He turned to her and said, "Betty, you wouldn't do anything to hurt me, would you?" She responded, "Of course not, Lloyd." Spates, who didn't come forward until the 1990s, also recount that Jowers had been delivered a large sum of money right before the assassination. James McCraw stated that Jowers had shown him a rifle that day after the shooting, told him it was the one used to kill King. "We confronted Lloyd," Peppers explained. "We told him he was likely to be indicted if he didn't help us, if he didn't give more information. Jowers didn't know there was no way the grand jury was going to indict him. All he knew was what he did, what he participated in, how much money he got for it. He got quite a large sum of money, built a taxi cab company with it, had gambling debts with the local mafia, figure Frank Liberto forgiven. Liberto, an associate of Louisiana crime boss Carlos Marcello, turned out to be involved in assassination also. He owned a produce warehouse and one of his regular customers, John Ferrin, was making his weekly shopping trip there when he overheard Liberto shout into a phone and an hour before the shooting, "Shoot the son of a bitch" on the balcony. Nathan Whitlock and his mother, Lavada Addison Whitlock, who owned a restaurant frequented by Liberto, stated that Liberto had told them he was responsible for the King murder, setting up the patsy. One thing that many don't know is that Ray was in prison in 1967, the year before the assassination, serving a 20-year sentence for a grocery store robbery in 1959. After a couple of unsuccessful escape attempts, Ray succeeded in breaking out of prison on April 23, 1967. Unknown to Ray was the fact that the escape had been orchestrated because he had already been chosen as the patsy in the planned assassination of King, which was still a year away. The warden of Missouri State Penitentiary was paid $25,000 by Russell Atkins Sr. to allow the escape, as confirmed by Ron Atkins. The money was delivered to Atkins by Tolson, and it was this same connection that would later be used to finance the assassination of King. After his escape from prison, Ray went to Chicago for a few weeks where he got a job. But worried about getting caught, he went to Canada, specifically Montreal, and took his name, Eric S. Galt. His intention was to get a passport under a false name and to travel to a country which he could not be extradited. At the Neptune Barn in Montreal Dock area in August of 1967, Ray met a mysterious figure who identified himself as Raoul. Asked Ray to help him with smuggling scheme. Ray agreed, and months ahead Ray would do a number of jobs, including gun running for Raoul, for which he was paid and given a car. Always, Ray had a wait to be contacted by Raoul, who Ray said co-coordinated his activities right until the day of the assassination. At one point, Ray was instructed to purchase a deer rifle with a scope, although Raoul was not satisfied with the one he bought and made him exchange it for another. Ray was instructed to go to Memphis. He arrived April 3, 1968. Upon meeting with Raoul in his hotel, was given the name of Jim's Grill, where two were to meet at 3 p.m. the next day. He also handed the rifle over to Raoul and always maintained that he never saw it again. Ray rented a room at the rooming house above Jim's Grill. The two met the day of the assassination as planned. About an hour before the shooting, he was given money to go to the movies. But the first, he tried to have a tire repaired because Raoul had said he wanted to use the car. But when Ray heard the sirens that followed the shooting, he got scared and left the area. Fearing he had been set up, Ray left the country and ended up in England, where he was captured on June 8, 1968 at London's Heathrow Airport as he was trying to leave the UK. Once charged with the crime, Ray was pressured by his second lawyer, Percy Foreman, to plead guilty on the grounds that the evidence was too strong against him and Foreman was not in good health and couldn't offer a strong defense. Foreman was sent in with purpose of replacing the original lawyer, Pepper says. Foreman offered Ray $500 to get another lawyer if he pleaded guilty and even put this in writing. Ray would regret accepting this offer for the rest of his life. He tried unsuccessfully to rescind the guilty plea and get a trial for the next 30 years, finally dying in prison of cancer in 1998. Peppers become convinced of Ray's innocence. It was 10 years after the assassination before Peppers would even consider meeting with Ray. He had taken for granted at first that Ray was the assassin, but he was encouraged to meet with him, Reverend Ralph Abernathy, who had succeeded King as president of the SCLC. Abernathy had remained unsatisfied with the official account of the shooting. In the book, Pepper described his first meeting with Ray in 1978 and how he quickly came to believe that Ray had not been the shooter and that the case was essentially still unsolved. It wasn't until 1988 before Pepper became certain that Ray had not played any knowing part in the conspiracy, and at that point he agreed to represent him, which he did until his death. Purveyors of the official story of the assassination have always claimed that Raul was an invention of Ray's, and mainstream media accounts refer to this question as still unanswered, even though Peppers not only found witnesses who described their connection to Raul, he actually found Raul himself with the help of a witness, Glenda Grabo. Pepper learned that his last name was Quajol. She identified Raul as someone she had known in Houston in 1963 and who around 1974 in a fit of rage had implicated himself in the King assassination right before raping her. Grabo, who also identified Jack Ruby as someone who she had seen with Raul in 1963. This fascinating story is recounted both in the act of state and the plot to kill King. One of the most intriguing things to come out of both of these books is the account of a young FBI agent named Don Wilson, who after the assassination was sent to check out a white Mustang with Alabama plates. Ray drove a white Mustang that had been abandoned and that was thought to be connected to the assassination. Wilson opened the car door and some papers fell out. He examined them later and found a torn out piece of a 1963 Dallas, Texas telephone directory. Written on the page was the name Raul and the initial J and a phone number, which turned out to be that of Las Vegas nightclub run by Jack Ruby, the man who had shot Lee Harvey Oswald in the basement of the Dallas police station. A second piece of paper had a list of names with the amount of money beside each. Wilson decided to hold on to this evidence, fearing it would disappear forever if he turned it in. He held on it for 29 years before making it available to Pepper and the King family. The shooter revealed. Another incredible revelation in the plot to kill King is the identity of a man who appears to have fired the fatal shot. Peppers learned his identity from Lenny B. Curtis, who was a custodian at the Memphis Police Department rifle range. Curtis told Peppers this in 2003, and Peppers recorded a disposition with him but kept it confidential out of fear for Curtis' life. Only after his death in 2013 did Peppers reveal what Curtis had said, that the shooter was Memphis police officer Frank Strasser. We had to be very careful about Curtis' safety, Peppers said. Curtis said to Peppers in his disposition that he heard Strasser say about King 4 or 5 months before the assassination that somebody was going to blow his motherfucking brains out. He also described that Strasser had practiced in the rifle range with a particular rifle that had been brought in 4 or 5 days earlier by a member of the fire department. That fireman had shown the rifle to Curtis and asked, "How would you like that, scoundrel? That baby there?" When Curtis said it looked like any other rifle, he replied, "No, this is a special one. That baby is special." Lenny remembered that on one day of the assassination, Strasser spent the whole day practicing with it. Strasser has given several conflicting accounts of where he was and what he was doing that day. After the assassination, Curtis said he was followed and intimidated by Strasser. Pepper writes. In the book, Pepper describes how he came to meet with Strasser, who he described as committed and devoted racist. He had no respect for black people at all. Pepper said he wasn't explicit about his racism, but he was not at all sympathetic to what Martin Luther King was all about. In hope of prompting an admission, Pepper lied and told him he had been implicated in the killing by Lloyd Giles, but Strausser didn't take the bait. Pepper also told Strausser that the footprint found in the bushes after the shooting were size 13 shoe, which they were. Then he asked him about the size of his feet. He had a bit of a grin on his face, and he said 13 large, Pepper says. Pepper also arranged to have cab driver Nathan Whitlock, who Strausser knew, tell him that there was a good possibility that he, Strausser, would be indicted for the shooting. He responded, "What are they going to indict me for? Something I did 30 years ago?" Then he caught himself and added, "Or something I knew about 30 years ago." A threat to the powers that be. As Pepper explained, King was not only hated by the establishment as he rose to prominence in the 1960s, he was feared. Not only did he have the ability to move large numbers of people with his message of peace and tolerance, but he had to design a political career. He had to design on a political career. According to Pepper, King was planning to run for president on a third-party ticket with fellow anti-war activist Dr. Benjamin Spock. He was also causing panic in powerful circles because he intended to bring hundreds of thousands of poor people to an encampment in Washington, D.C. in the spring of 1968 to bring attention to the plight of the poor. They were terrified that the anger level when the demonstrators were not going to get what they wanted was going to rise to such a point where Martin was going to lose control of that group and the more radical among them would take over and they would have a revolution. Pepper explained, and they didn't have the troops to put it down. That was a real fear that the Army had, and I think it was a justifiable fear. King would have also posed an increasing threat to the political establishment because he intended to become much more vocal in his opposition to the Vietnam War. He had been influenced by an article and photos by Peppers called The Children of Vietnam, which was published in the Rampart magazine in January of 1967 and later reprinted in Look magazine. The man who published the piece in Look, Bill Atwood, actually told Peppers he received a visit from a former New York governor and ambassador to the Soviet Union, Orville Harriman, who passed on a message from President Johnson that he would appreciate it if Atwood never published anything by Pepper. Beyond King's importance as a powerful force for justice, peace, and equality, he was also Pepper's friend, and the loyal journalist had to deal with the loss. He sought the truth about who really killed King and fought for justice for the man falsely accused of his murder, he writes. But he did understand it, and we should all be grateful that he did.
Portions of the following program may be unsuitable for younger or more sensitive viewers. Viewer discretion is advised.
Remember, the enemy has only images and illusions, behind which he hides his true motives. Destroy the image, and you will break the enemy.
I'm here to tell you tonight that the businessmen, the mayor of this city, the police commissioner of this city, and everybody in the white power structure of this city must take a responsibility for everything.
Luther and I, and everyone in this arena tonight, are unified by the same great American values. We're proud of our country. We respect our flag. Wouldn't you love to see one of these NFL when somebody disrespects our flag? To say, get that son of off the field right now, out, he's fired.
Race is when you use your power and influence to subject people into inferiority. Utterances can't be racist.
Look around you, man. They own this shit. They own this couch you sitting on, them shoes you got on your feet, this building, this school, this country, you. We're behind enemy lines, dog.
So you must first of all remember, someone was not originally designed with black people in mind. Right on. And it for black people to in the end begin to demand their rights and an equal share in this country which they died for. Right on. Hey, and we definitely are not going back to Africa.
In the church, we used to sing the song, "Good news, the chariot is coming." While you sit here today, knowing that you have come to hear good news, you must realize in advance what good news for you might be bad news for somebody else. Right? What good news for the sheep might be bad news.
They say, oh, things are getting so much better for you. In 1849, it was hitting blacks on the head 100 times a day. In 1990, they hit them 48 times a day. Isn't it better? Oh, it's got to be better. You're saying 52 blows.
The only purpose of most black Americans on earth today is to destroy.
I think that's noble. Italians love Italians. When Irish love Irish. But when a nigga loves a nigga, then I'm carnival sin. They have blood in their hands. When we say they have blood in their hands, we are not saying him, George Bezos, went and killed. But white people colonized us. They dispersed us. They enslaved our people. They sucked our economy dry. They are still sucking it dry even today. That's white people. Tony Blair, George Bush, Napoleon Bonaparte, Leopold, Adolf Hitler, Benjamin Netanyahu. All white people, they are the same. They are racist and they are full of hate.
Waiting for you. You have many questions, and though the process has altered your consciousness, you remain irrevocably human. Ergo, some of my answers you will understand, and some of them you will not. Concordantly, while your first question may be the most pertinent, you may or may not realize it is also the most irrelevant.
Why am I here? Our world is coming crumbling down. The coons are coming.
You have to understand that white America has an uncanny way of making the victim the victimizer. Excuse me, master, for putting my head in the way of your club. Not that your club is brutalizing my head and putting hickeys on it. My head got in the way of your free swing and broke your shaft.
Assiduously avoided, it is not unexpected and thus not beyond a measure of control, which has led you inexorably here.
There are more connections in the human body than there are stars in the galaxy. We possess a gigantic network of information to which we have almost no access.
Is older than you know. I prefer counting from the emergence of one integral anomaly to the emergence of the next, in which case this is the 6th version.
5 months before me. There are only 2 possible explanations. 5 months before me. Either no one told me, or no one knows.
Precisely. As you are undoubtedly gathering, the anomaly is systemic, creating fluctuations in even the most simplistic equations.
Control me! I'm gonna smash you to biscuit! Choice. The problem is choice.
Let us remember that because we're Baptists, we're not brutalized because we're Methodists, we're not brutalized because we're Muslims, we're not brutalized because we're Catholics. We're brutalized because we are black people in America.
Because white people made him to be what he is. They made him to look evil, because that's their role, to make all of us black people to look evil and to hate ourselves. I can't hate.
You're a nigga till you die. If you're a poor nigga, you're a poor nigga. If you're a rich nigga, you're a rich nigga. But you never stop being a nigga. And if you get to be educated, you're just an educated nigga.
Well, I'm told every day I'm on air that I'm racist because I call out racism. That is maddening to me, and I'm crying about it because it's crazy.
So the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is teaching you and I and trying to tell the white man to get this powder keg out of his house. Let the black man separate from his house. Let the black man have his own house. Let the black man have his own land and his own property.
I thought the bitch was white! Damn it! I thought the bitch was white!
That's true. I think that white people are so guilty, knowing what they've done to black people, that they feel if the deeds were reversed, they would hate the black man if he had done the same thing to them. So it's actually, it reflects a guilt complex on the part of whites when they ask us, do we hate them? And if you notice, Uncle Sam has formed a habit of going all over the world. He calls it the ugly American, or the American image. He thinks that everybody hates him because it's a guilt complex. And if you think that if you are worried about Europeans hating you, and they're your allies and your cousins, well, follow for you to think that Negroes in this country would hate you, especially in light of what has been done to black people in this country by white people.
Now check it out. The white ball dominates everything, right? Knocks the shit out the yellow ball, the red ball, right? And the game's over when the white ball drives the black ball completely off the table.
But you have to see that all of this is hypocrisy.
I love Malcolm. Malcolm called me the Sunday that he died. I was working Basin Street East. He said, Brother Greg, you coming by today? I said, Malcolm, I love you. And I said, I love you so much, I don't even want to take a chance to be there. He said, what do you mean, Brother Greg? I said, well, I close tonight, Sunday night at Basin Street East. And I said, but I had my wife book me a flight into Chicago at 8 o'clock this morning. And I'm going to Chicago, and I had way beneath my salary booked me into a college about 10 miles from the airport. And I'm going to go there and speak this afternoon, and I'm going to stay there until they tell me you did. Because I'm not going to let this government get two of us for the price of one. And I'm going to call Adam Clayton Powell when I finish talking to you and beg him not to come there. Because today, the United States government is going to get you.